Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Ado and I'm going to share this very easy bread recipe with you today. In this jar I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of yeast. Yeast is a fungus that's used for baking. To that I'm going to add some sugar, and then I'll follow up with half a cup of lukewarm water. And then I'm going to shake it and then cover it and place in the warm place for 15 minutes. The reason why we're doing this is because we want to activate the yeast and make sure it's ready when we add it to our bread. It just helps break down the sugar in the flour. So for this recipe, we're going to use 6 cups of all-purpose flour. You can use bread flour if you have that. Bread flour is usually recommended for, well, as the name suggests, bread. But for this recipe, I'm just using an all-purpose flour, and I sifted 6 cups, and I'm going to add half a cup of sugar. And then to that, I'm going to add the yeast. Look at the bubbles. You can see that the yeast is active and ready to go. So I'm going to add the yeast mixture to the flour, and when I'm done adding the yeast, I'm going to follow up with my other wet ingredients. So there I am adding the yeast, and you want to make sure that you don't add too much water when you're proofing the yeast, so that when you add it to your flour, the mixture doesn't become too wet. You want to keep a thick dough. You can always add more water as you go. So as you can see, I already added 2 eggs, half a cup of milk, 4 tablespoons of melted butter, and you can see the mixture. It looks really it doesn't look it kind of looks dry, but you actually want it like this because you're going to kind it. So if it's too runny, if you add too much liquid, you won't be able to mold it. So you want like a thick paste, but enough, not too thick. You want more of an elastic texture, and that is what we're trying to get when we kind the dough. So essentially, the yeast is going to do something called fermentation, anaerobic fermentation. That is like, the yeast is going to break down the sugar in the flour, and also the added sugar to this dough. And while the yeast is active in the dough, is going to cause the dough to rise, and after the dough rises, it's going to increase the elasticity of this dough. And this is what makes bread different from all other doughs, is the process of waiting for the yeast to work on the sugar, and then it gives you that texture that you want. So here we're just going to kind for 15 minutes. You want to kind until the dough is quite elastic, and then when you're done, you take the dough, and then I'm going to place it in a bowl that I greased with butter. And then the reason why I'm greasing this dough with the butter is so it doesn't stick, and it's easy for me to take out when I'm done. It also allows me to improves the elasticity of the dough. It's just easy to work with when the bowl is a bit greased. So I'm going to take the dough and put it in the bowl, and then cover that with a napkin, and then put a plate on top of it, and then place in a warm place for 4 hours. I used my oven. The oven was turned off, so I placed the dough in the oven for 4 hours while I waited for the dough to rise, or the yeast to work on the dough. So that dough we had doubled in size, so I cut it in half and then placed the other half in another bowl, and so this is what we got. So I'm going to work on, so you pinch the dough to release the air, and then you can see how the dough is quite elastic right now. That's what I was talking about. It becomes very, very soft and easy to work with. So those are the two doughs we have, and you can see how it stretches, kind of like the pizza dough. So I'm just going to work out all the air out, work out all the air out of the dough, and then I just formed it into I formed each dough into just a random shape, so it's easy for me to cut it. And I just cut it with a knife so that it's as even as possible. And then I use some butter to grease my hand, and I'm going to take each section and form a ball from each section that we've cut out, just like that. It's kind of hard to explain, but you can see what I'm doing on the screen. So I just put some grease on my hand so it doesn't stick, and then I'm just going to form each section that we've cut into a ball, just like that. So actually for this recipe I made some bread rolls, and I made one loaf of bread, and I made a fancy other bread, I don't know if we say style, or just I tried to make 3 varieties of bread, as you will see as we go further. So I'm just going to place that on the sheet. I already greased it with some butter, and then make sure that you don't overcrowd it, because we're still going to leave this out. We're not going to put it in the oven right away. We still want that yeast to keep working on it, and we're going to leave this out after we've cut it and sectioned it and formed it into the shape, and we're just going to leave it on the countertop. And then I moved on to the other dough, and I told you I'm going to make one loaf as well. So I just cut the dough in half, and then I formed it into a loaf of bread, just like that. So I spread it out, and then I just rolled it over just like that. And I'm adding flour to the countertop so the bread doesn't stick to the countertop, just like that. So that loaf I'm going to take and put it into the baking sheet that's already been greased with some butter, and then I'm just going to put that in there. So this is the fancy bread I was talking about. I'm just getting 3 doughs that I've cut into thin strings, and I'm just going to braid it, just like when you're braiding your hair. I'm just going to braid it like that. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to pinch the ends so that it doesn't unravel. Not that it's going to unravel, but it just makes it look neater. So this is another style of making the balls. I'm just going to fold it underneath and pinch it so that it doesn't come undone. So you can have fun with it. You can do different styles. You can roll it. You can make it just however you want. There is no rules on what you can or cannot do. So this is the dough that we're done here, and like I said, we're just going to let that sit on the countertop. And as you can see here, the dough that we had initially has now doubled, and all the spaces that were in between the dough has now been filled up because the dough has expanded. So now I'm going to put the dough into our oven, and I'm baking at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. You want to watch this closely. And then after 20 minutes, I took it out and then brushed some butter on top of the bread, just for some shine. You don't have to do this, but it just makes it look really pretty. So I just brushed some butter on each of the bread, and then I popped it back into the oven for an additional 5 minutes. And then when it's done, you take it out. So here is when I'm just putting it into the oven. Just make sure you wear your baking gloves, just like that. and yeah, we're just going to bake that for additional 5 minutes on 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is the final product. As you can see, it's golden brown and it's ready to eat. And one thing I must say here is you don't want to leave them in the baking sheet. You want to take it out as soon as possible and put it on a baking rack. So this rack is just what I put the bread on top, so that it stops baking and all the steam can evaporate and let the bread cool. So this is the final product. That's the bread, that's the braided bread, and those are the rolls. And this is the final product. This is the Nutella I had the following day. So hopefully you guys like the video, and don't forget to subscribe and comment down below if you tried out the recipe, and tell me how it turned out. Thank you for sticking around with me. Bye bye.